You're probably looking at this title right now thinking, wait a minute, this isn't a South Park video, what happened to Blooms? Well, surprisingly enough, I actually do have interest in other things besides South Park, okay? It's not like my whole life revolves around South Park. I mean, my taste in media is greatly varied. For example, I like other adult animated series that focus on humor often seen as dark and offensive, while also being very self-referential and satirizing many aspects of the current political and social landscapes. Okay, maybe my taste isn't that varied, but cartoons made for adults are a unique form of media, since they're practically limitless in potential for storytelling. In the animated world, there are no limitations as to what can be brought to screen. Well, unless of course you want to show Muhammad, then we all know how that goes. This limitless potential, however, is why it's so frustrating to see just how derivative and unimaginative most adult cartoons are. Far too many adult cartoons come across as Family Guy clones, where the humor generally boils down to offensive thing make me haha. But that's not to say that the genre is inherently bad, as there are several standouts among the heaps of mediocrity. For every 5 Mr. Pickles, there's a South Park. For every 10 of the show that I just decided I will never say the name of because I hate it that much, there's a BoJack Horseman. But even among these incredible cartoons, one cartoon stands out for its unique sense of humor. I'm of course referring to Big Mac. Jerry, I told you to stop changing my script. Sorry about that. I'm of course referring to Rick and Morty. The humor in the show is unique because of one specific rule. The show is at its funniest when it's the most terrifying. Now, that may sound a little counterintuitive, but all will be explained shortly. So with the intro out of the way, let's get into it. Rick and Morty, the comedy in cosmic horror. You know what's even more terrifying than the horror in Rick and Morty? How exposed and unprotected your online activity is. To combat this, I use today's sponsor, Private Internet Access VPN. Private Internet Access is a VPN app for almost any device, including Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, Linux, and many more. VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, and it works by changing your IP address and rerouting it through an encrypted tunnel, therefore hiding your online activity from your internet service provider, network administrator, government censors, or really just anyone trying to snoop around in your info. Is there a show or movie that you love that's not available on your streaming services due to where you're located? Well, I have great news. With Private Internet Access, you can simply set your location to somewhere it is available, and just like that, you're watching your favorite shows and movies. Private Internet Access is the most customizable VPN on the market, providing you with tons of different options to make your VPN experience truly your own. They're also the most transparent VPN provider with over 30 million downloads. One thing that I like a lot is that they have a no logs policy, meaning that they don't record or store any of their users' data, and it's been proven several times in court. They promise a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it out completely risk-free. And if you use my link, which will be in the top of the description, you'll have access to complete digital privacy for less than $2 a month, as well as 4 extra months for free. So what are you waiting for? Go click the first link in the description and sign up right now, risk-free, and start protecting yourself when browsing the web. And another huge thank you to Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video. A topic that is often brought up in the show is that of existentialism. Existentialism is a sort of all-encompassing term used to describe the inherent human desire to understand our existence and the meaning behind it. And while the answer to the meaning of life has been grappled with by humanity since we had the mental capacity to do so, Rick and Morty has a pretty firm stance on the meaning behind our existence. There is none. The universe is entirely chaos, and there's no meaning or order to any of it. The terror of our insignificance in the universe is a branch of horror known as cosmic horror, or cosmicism, a philosophy developed by the king of existential horror, H.P. Lovecraft. More specifically, cosmic horror is the fear of the unknowable and incomprehensible. Upon hearing this definition, you may begin to understand how a show that heavily focuses on the theories and ideas of the universe would utilize this form of horror, considering the universe is about as incomprehensible and unknowable as it gets. Now, you would imagine that a show with a core philosophy as dark as that would be some kind of tragic story about the pointlessness of our existence, so let's go ahead and check out what genre exactly Rick and Morty falls into. Oh, black comedy. What exactly does that mean? Black comedy, also known as black humor, is a style of comedy that makes light of subject matter that is generally considered taboo, particularly subjects that are normally considered serious or painful to discuss. Okay, but how can a show whose core philosophy focuses on the bleak horror of the reality that everything as we know it exists for no real purpose possibly be funny in any way? Well, I think a visual aid would be the best way for me to get my point across, so here's one of the most iconic scenes from the show.
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
Yeah, welcome to the club, pal.
Now, if you really break this clip down into its core components, it shouldn't be funny in any way. A creature develops self-awareness, asks its creator what its purpose is, and discovers its sole purpose is to complete an incredibly simple and mundane task that's practically negligible in every aspect. I mean, that's terrifying, but watching this scene for the first time, you probably laughed. This is for a few reasons. Cosmicism, while inherently terrifying, is utilized in a comedic way, not by the terror itself, but the reaction to the terror. Now follow me here because I'm far from a philosopher or a scholar or someone who actually knows what they're talking about in any way, but when the characters in the show are confronted with these horrifying displays of cosmicism, their reactions remain relatively consistent. Their attitude towards this crushing nothingness is simple. Who cares? They'll have experiences that are mind-numbingly terrifying, revealing the truly incomprehensible horror of the universe, yet they just continue through their day as if nothing happened. I mean, yeah, you may have just experienced an entire lifetime in the span of the last 5 minutes and are now questioning the fabric of our reality and the likelihood that all of it could simply be a simulation from a machine in an intergalactic arcade. But I mean, who cares? We're at Blips and Chits! It's the indifference that the characters have towards this lack of meaning that allows these scenes to be funny. It creates a sense of relatability between the characters and the viewers. Everyone watching has most definitely had these same thoughts, and for many, these thoughts create an anxiety and fear that can stay with them their whole life. But watching these characters go through these horrible situations and move on so easily eases the tension a bit. And it allows the viewer to laugh at the most absurd part of the universe, our existence. The idea of cosmic horror can be comedic if you can take a step back and observe it under a mindset of indifference. Yeah, everything we know is probably pointless, but so what? Another great example of this comes from Season 1, Episode 6, when Rick accidentally infects the entire world with a disease that turns them into Cronenbergs. In a last-ditch effort, he takes Morty to a dimension nearly identical to theirs, except the Rick and Morty from that dimension are killed soon after finding a cure to the disease. So they leave their real family behind and move into this dimension, having to bury their own dead bodies. This is one of the darkest moments from the entirety of the show, and yet it's still played up semi-comedically. While Morty is understandably scarred and trying to process the implications of doing this, Rick once again reacts exactly as expected. Sure, I may have just killed nearly everyone on Earth and left my family in this bleak post-apocalyptic horror, but this reality is close enough, who cares, let's watch some interdimensional cable and drink some liquor. The comedy of watching these situations of existential horror play out just to be largely disregarded by the main characters is extremely unique to the show. It allows the viewer to laugh because it feeds into the inherent human desire to know the answer by challenging the idea itself with an absurd answer. There is none. Another of my favorite dark moments comes from Season 4's The Vat of Acid episode. This episode has countless moments of dark and twisted cosmicism coming into play. My favorite has to be Morty using his new checkpoint machine to live his life consequence-free, up until he meets a woman and falls in love with her. He lives happily with this woman for what's presumed to be a long time, growing older, maturing, seeing the world in different ways, and even having some traumatic experiences, like when their plane goes down in a frozen mountain range. Morty does all he can to help his girlfriend and the other survivors get out of there. Also, real quick, sick South Park reference with Morty wearing the Kenny coat because, Kenny dies all the time and comes back just like Morty's. Well, you get it. He's even willing to venture on what would likely be a suicide mission in order to get his phone to call for help. Once he reaches his backpack, he finds the checkpoint machine, and knowing full well that he could hit the reset button and save himself, he decides not to. He's so happy with his life, he'd rather take his almost certain death than hit that reset button. But just when it seems Morty is done for, the rescue team rolls in and saves all of them. The experience only strengthens Morty's relationship with his new girlfriend, and they go on to live a happy life together. It really is an important moment for Morty's character. He's finally breaking free of Rick's hold on him and going on to live the life that he wanted. It feels good to see Morty finally be happy after all he's been through, and surely there's no way that anything could ruin. Psych, Morty just got reset to before he ever met the girl, so none of that actually happened, and all of the emotions and growth his character experienced meant absolutely nothing, since now he knows he'll never experience that life. And not only will he never experience that life, he now knows what it was like to have that life and metaphorically watch it slip right through his fingers. Christ, in a show that is absolutely full of terrifying existential horror, this stands out to me as one of the darkest moments. And despite all of that, this is undoubtedly my favorite episode from season 4, and in my top 5 of all time. I laughed harder at this episode than anything else in season 4, solely because of how horribly dark it gets. It's exactly what I've been discussing this whole time. This absolutely terrifying sequence of events that is a literal nightmare for the average person is justified when it's revealed that Rick actually planned all of it just to get revenge after Morty said his vat of acid idea was dumb. Once again, it's this unwillingness to recognize just how mind-bendingly terrifying these situations are that make it so effective comedically. The fact that Rick was willing to do all that just because Morty said he had a dumb idea just shows how warped his mindset is when it comes to the universe. Why not inflict some horrific psychological damage over such a small issue? Because once again, who cares? None of this matters.
It's over, Morty. Feel this. Take this in. This is God.
Is this because of the vet?
No.
To summarize, Rick and Morty is a show that I enjoy a lot, and the majority of that enjoyment comes from the horrors that are inherent to it. I don't think that there are many shows that could stand up to it in terms of creating comedy from cosmic terror. And this uniqueness is, in a sense, its greatest asset. And that is how the show finds the comedy in cosmic horror. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention the most frightening, terrifying, absolutely spine-tingling piece of cosmic horror that they ever utilized.
I turned myself into a pickle, Morty! I'm Pickle Rick!
Thank you guys so much for watching. I know it's kind of weird that I'm doing an actual outro, but I have a few quick announcements. So first of all, I started a Patreon, so feel free to go support that. If you want to support this channel and help me be able to make more videos, you can get early access to new videos, and I'll put your name at the end of every video in a special thanks section. So yeah, go support that if you want to. If not, it's cool too. Second, I started a Discord server, so if you want to go join that, I will have it linked in the description. It's just going to be a little place for everyone in this community to go chill and talk about whatever you feel like, so feel free to go join that. Also, if you join the Patreon, you can get access to a private channel in the Discord for patrons only, and I'll probably be hanging out in there a lot talking to you guys, so yeah, feel free to go do that. And finally, I wanted to announce that I am starting a podcast with a friend of mine. The first episode will most likely be up next week sometime. We do a fast food tier list. I know that's super creative, but yeah, it's just going to be a little fun little side thing that we do where maybe you guys can, get to know more about myself and my opinions on things other than cartoons. So yeah, that's about it for the announcements. Thank you guys so much for all the support recently. It really means the absolute world to me. I love each and every single one of you. And that's it. Later.